Ansarullah, they are still carrying out strikes, and they are carrying out intense strikes. And in the past couple of days, they carried out an attack against USS Carl Vinson, the aircraft carrier, and they also carried out an attack against Israel in 2 locations inside of the state of Israel. Now, these attacks are coming simultaneously with interesting developments that are coming from Britain. The British government declared a few days back, and I spoke about it at the time, that they're deploying, some naval forces to protect freedom and security. And they said, we're just going on a casual trip. We're just cruising, down the English Channel and then up to the Mediterranean, and then we might go to the Red Sea, and then, we might strike Yemen, maybe. Anyway, they ended up in Yemen fairly quickly, only for the British government to show again, that we are keen and we are very honest in our support for the genocide. And that's another show of desperation, by the way, from the United States. The United States, with all its might, and with the aircraft carriers that they were terrorizing the whole world with. A couple of people from Yemen can expel them. But now, anyway, the UK is back to attack Yemen, and this is what the Defense Secretary in the UK had to say. Let me share this video quickly with you.
Speaker, I wish to make a statement to update the House on the action that we took last night against a Houthi military target. We did so in collective self-defense and to uphold the freedom of navigation, as Britain has always done. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, UK forces conducted a joint operation with US allies against a Houthi military facility in Yemen. Our intelligence analysis identified a cluster of buildings 15 miles south of Sana'a, used by the Houthis to manufacture drones of the type used to attack ships in the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Aden. Royal Air Force Typhoons, FGR-4s, with air refueling support from RAF Voyager tankers, struck a number of these buildings with paved way for precision bombs last night. This action was limited, it was targeted, it was devised to minimize the risk of civilian life. Everyone involved in the UK operation has returned to base safely. And I want to thank, on behalf of the House, all members of our armed forces involved in this operation, and to pay tribute to them for their total professionalism and their courage.
What did he just say? What did he just say in the beginning? Did anyone hear that? Did he say that we did so in what? Hold on a second. I need to repeat this for a second. We did so
in collective self-defense and to uphold the freedom of navigation, as Britain has always done.
Oh, of course. How can I forget? Of course, freedom of navigation, as UK always has done. Of course, how can I forget? Freedom of navigation and to protect, other countries. Yes, of course. Basically, what he's saying is he wants to protect the freedom of a child-killing entity to kill freely without being bothered by a few people, in Sana'a trying to, God forbid, implement international law or, try and do something to prevent the genocide and feed 2.5 million starving people inside of the Gaza Strip. And the priority, of course, for the Secretary of Defense and for the British government is, again, of course, Yemen, not the people in Gaza. Israel receiving 1-ton bombs, half ton, that's fine. That's all good. Even if they kill children, Hamas might be hiding there. But the priority is to go to Yemen, so that they can also attack Yemen with the United States. Guys, this is a humiliation, by the way. And another is just shambolic and shameful, and shows you how much the British government is complicit in this genocide, participating in this genocide cartel, and shamelessly trying to defend its position to go and attack the Yemeni people standing up for the rights of the Palestinian people and implement and championing international law and democracy, by the way. He's going there to cover up the failure that's happening from the United States. The United States, they've confirmed a few days ago that an F-18 Super Hornet fell. You casually fall. What happened? I don't know, it fell. Guy was eating a Snickers, maybe, having a snack on the Super Hornet, and he can't see the wrap, and he fell in the Red Sea. That was, of course, at least trying to get away from a Yemeni attack, if not directly hit by a Yemeni missile falling down. They went through 4 aircraft carriers, the United States. And what is Britain trying to do? What is the British government trying to do, or trying to show or prove by participating? The Yemeni people, they told you and they told the whole world, we're not stopping up until the genocide stops and the siege is lifted. Prioritize ending the genocide and lifting the siege off of 2.5 million people. 20,000 children, infants, fetuses, women, men, everything is destroyed. That's the priority, not Yemen. And the Yemeni people, there's no way to stop them. You cannot stop such a people. When are these thick imbeciles in power going to understand? You cannot stop these people because they are fighting based on faith and principles. The truth is on their side. Justice is on their side. You can't defeat them. And the priority is to stop the genocide. Starmer met with the Palestinian prime minister. He told them 101 million. Continue down this line, correct the previous mistakes. But no, of course, the British government is still trying to show that it's somewhat capable. You're not capable of doing jack. You can't do anything to defeat the Yemeni people. And if the United States couldn't defeat them with 4 aircraft carriers, you're going to do nothing. You're just going to show like you're doing something. And it isn't going to happen. This whole genocide coalition is a massive failure, by the way. They set up this coalition hoping to get 7 to 9 countries. Eventually, a couple of countries, they were talking about Germany, Greece, a couple of Italy, I think. They sent officers to observe the operation. And it ended up with only the UK and the US. Now, the US took the lead. Britain was out of the picture for a while, unless it's, of course, reconnaissance missions. But now, of course, they're back in the picture after they said we're going to have a nice cruise in our naval, ships to the region, and very quickly arriving to the Red Sea, and all of a sudden, bang, they're attacking in Yemen. This was the second thing, or the third thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Now, the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about is we're witnessing a change of dynamics in the region, undeniably. Many changes have happened in the past 2 years. And one of those big changes that are happening is the relationship between countries in the region. The increase in ties between Iran and Saudi Arabia, China brokering deals, China getting closer to Egypt, having for the first time ever historic drills with Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt obtaining J-10 fighter jets with air-to-air capability, equation changing fighter jets to combat Israeli fighter jets in case a war breaks out between them. But one of those most significant developments were between Turkey and between Egypt. Why? Because after the coup, the military coup in Egypt that General Assisi carried out against the democratically elected Mohammed Morsi with the Muslim Brotherhood government in what was described as the only democratic elections in Egypt's history, by the way, by many observers. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I don't think the pharaohs had any democratic elections. But ever since that time, because also Erdogan and Morsi, they had plans, Erdogan took a very harsh stance against Egypt. And in Egypt, it was very hostile towards Turkey. And that's something that wasn't really abnormal. Turkey and Egypt are two countries that have had their ups and downs many times before. However, in recent years, and that's before the genocide in Gaza began, they started to talk a little bit more. Why? Because both of them understood the mutual threat that's happening and they're facing from Israel in the Mediterranean, especially in relation to the natural gases in the region. They saw the deal that Israel had with a couple of other countries too. Egypt showed Turkey at one point that they are able to have a block or a relationship with Greece that might not really be great for Turkey. Turkey started to come back to Egypt, and they both understood that we need to gradually build back those relationships. However, ever since the genocide began, the countries started to increase their ties to new levels. And this was very visible with the Strategic Cooperation Council that was declared, firstly, with the historic meetings between the Egyptian president and the Turkish president back and forth, delegations in both countries, and they established what was labeled as a Strategic Cooperation Council. Egypt was very interested in getting some of the advanced UAVs and drones that Turkey produces, and indeed they have signed deals. But now there's something even more dangerous or more interesting, to say the least. So there were special forces, both from Egypt and Turkey, Turkish special forces and Egyptian special forces. They conducted a joint drill. Now, this joint drill included urban combat, sniper, parachute, helicopter, and direct mission training. And they published a video that I wanted to share with you. So we'll so satisfied with that amount of that video. But anyway, you get the message. Egypt and Turkey are expanding their cooperation. Drills now between both of them, more coordination, the Strategic Cooperation Council, more military deals that they're having together. Egypt buying some of the most advanced drones and UAVs coming from Turkey. Now, that's not the only thing. That's not the only thing. There were the drills that happened between China and Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula. Again, these are historic drills. They never happened before. For the first time ever, China and Russia and Egypt, they have a joint air drill together. They did not declare too much about it, and they didn't say much. But what's for sure is that it concerned some people. And those who were concerned were primarily in Israel. There were multiple reports about Israeli concerns in relation to this drill that was conducted between Egypt and China. But now it didn't stop with Egypt, especially with the fact that not a lot has been declared. Now there's also more worry coming from Israel about these dealings and these things that are happening between China and also Lebanon, Lebanese territories, Chinese airplanes, Chinese aircraft landing in the Beirut airport. This was one of the video that was also published online.
Good morning, Papa Lima Alpha Alpha Fox 40, confirm inbound to Oscar Lima Bravo Alpha. 40, familiar with our airport and FIR? Military airbase. 40, continue with tower 152, decimal 7, have a great day, sir.
So on the ground, this means that China now is showing presence, military presence, on the southern borders of Israel and on the northern borders with Israel. And the concerning thing for Israel is not just one, but two things. Number one, the fact that these things are happening for the first time with a United States that is slowly getting less and less powerful. Then they do not know the content of what's happening. So they don't know why China had these drills with Egypt. They don't know why this Chinese cargo airplane landed in Beirut. But what they do know is, well, that from an Egyptian perspective, the Egyptian army almost solely trains and conducts drills against Israel, what in Egypt they label the northeastern front, and they constantly diversify their arms to have an equation or to have a balance between them and Israel. That's something that they've been clear about with the American administrations, one after the other. And of course, because the United States administrations constantly refused to listen to the Egyptian demands in having at least the same power as Israel when it comes to their fighter jets, for example, the United States always gave Israel the upper hand. They always gave them the edge with the fighter jets, with the fighter jet capabilities, with the type of equipment, with the level of equipment, not just the amount of money that they give. And that's why Egypt, especially in the past decade, they started to expand more. But this time it's reaching China. And China indeed gave them exactly what they need. So that's what's worrying Israel. The fact that the Chinese are having a foothold in the region with countries who will train against Israel. Everyone knows that the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel is a cold peace treaty. And like Benjamin Netanyahu said the other day, it's a cold peace treaty. They prefer a cold peace treaty than a hot war, like Benjamin Netanyahu said, but it's still cold and it's between governments. And at the end of the day, many on both sides declared that every aspect or every line of that agreement or peace treaty between Egypt and Israel has been breached, especially in the past 2 years. And that's something that also worries Israel from the developments between the Chinese and the Lebanese too, especially seeing as they don't have a lot of information revolving around it and what it actually includes.